The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to the South Shore Clean Cities Community Electric Vehicle Charging Webinar. My name is Ryan Lisek. I am Project Manager for South Shore Clean Cities, and I'd like to thank everyone for attending today and to our speakers for allowing us to share their stories and successes. As a reminder, all attendees are on listen-only mode, and today's webinar will be recorded and shared on the South Shore Clean Cities resources page on our website. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type them in the questions box on the panel to your right. If you have questions for a specific speaker, please address it accordingly. We will be monitoring the questions throughout and address them at the appropriate times. All right, I'd like to go ahead and introduce our speakers for today. We have myself, Ryan Lisek, South Shore Clean Cities. We have Leah Thill. She is the Senior Environmental Planner for Michiana Area Council of Governments. We also have Aaron Sawatsky-Kingsley. He is the Director in the Department of Environmental Resilience for the City of Goshen. And then we also have Therese Giroux. She is the Director for the City of South Bend Office of Sustainability. Once again, thank you all again for participating in this webinar. We really appreciate it. Leah, if you'd like to go ahead and start us off with a few basics about electric vehicles in Indiana. Take it away, Leah.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am very excited to talk to you all about electric vehicle infrastructure. And my role today is going to be to give you a background on the topic so that we're all on the same page to talk and understand the case studies that Goshen and South Bend are going to present. MACOG is a voluntary organization of local governments, and we are the regional planning organization for the South Bend Elkhart region in northern Indiana. My contact information is there on the slide, so feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions after the presentation. And I just want to add a note too as well that the reason that MACOG is interested in this space is because we have an interest in supporting transportation choices and ensuring that we have clean air in our region, and electric vehicles pair nicely with that. So our goal is to assist our local governments in being proactive to plan for that future. There we go. Some basic terminology that you will hear thrown around so that we're all on the same page here is listed on the slide. I think the most confusing if you're researching infrastructure is EVSE. That terminology is used to describe a charging station. And the reason for that's that technically the charger is on board the vehicle. And so in industry terms, it's EVSE, but in layman's terms, we'll just refer to it as a charging station as well. There we go. Some other terminology for you to be aware of is that there are different levels of charging, level 1, 2, and 3. So that's fairly easy to remember. This slide says DC fast charging. That is the same as level 3. They come at different speeds of charging with different miles per hour that a vehicle will gain by being plugged in at that level of charging. The good news is that at both level 1, which is like plugging into a regular outlet at home, 110-volt outlet, that plug and the level 2 plug are universal and all vehicles are compatible. And that's really, the level 2 is really the level we'll be talking most about today, which is really great for communities and destinations to have that charging available. And at that level, it's about 10 to 20 miles of range per hour of charging at that station. Up at level 3 with DC fast charging, that can get even more than 80 miles of range per 20 minutes of charging. So it's very fast, but here we diverge into having different industry standards on different vehicles. However, if you think about fueling with gasoline or something like that, you have the E85 pump, the premium, the diesel. So it's similar to that where there are different plugs that you'll find at a station. But we won't be talking much about this today because these are much more expensive and really gets outside of what many local governments or even businesses or other organizations would think of providing for their employees, customers, or the public. All right, so what's the competitive charging availability in our region and in the state of Indiana? The green dots on the map, that's from the Alternative Fuel Data Center that shows level 2 charging stations. You can see there are some, but what's interesting if you dig into the details here, many of these are actually located at auto dealerships or in other locations that really serve one destination and don't serve downtown. You'll notice there's nothing in downtown Elkhart, Plymouth, Warsaw, or Mishawaka or Napanee, and that's most of our cities in the region. So we're really working to expand publicly accessible charging stations that are walkable to many locations such as business districts and downtowns to attract people to those areas there. So I have for context a image of Indiana and the charging stations there, and you can see there are metro areas that are much more well served by level 2 charging infrastructure. A little bit of background on fast charging that's currently available. That's what these green dots now represent. You'll see they're clustered around Indianapolis, but it can be pretty difficult for vehicles with a range of 100 miles, which was the standard just a few years ago, to navigate the state of Indiana. That's changing. The Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust Fund is going to be investing over $5 million just in the DC fast charging level 3 infrastructure out of $6 million for electric vehicle infrastructure, as well as our region was the fortunate recipient of an Electrify America installation at the UP Mall in Mishawaka. So now we do have our first fast charging station that can be used by all vehicles. Proprietary Tesla superchargers are not shown on this map. A little bit about electric vehicles in our region. You'll notice from this trend that they are increasing at a rate of 50 to 100% growth per year in our region, and there is a lot of interest despite the lack or the gaps in charging infrastructure at both level 2 and level 3. Another thing that's interesting is that all electric vehicles are about almost half of the vehicles that are on the road that are plug-in. There are two different types that can plug in. There's the plug-in hybrid, which still can use gasoline when it's not in electric mode, and then the all-electric, all-battery-powered vehicle. And that's important because those vehicles are entirely dependent on electricity to get to their next destination. So they rely on both fast chargers for long-distance travel and destination level 2 chargers to fill the gaps or when they're traveling just around our region. So these are very important. It's not just a nice to have, but it's a matter of getting to your next destination. I want to back up into the high level of why any organization, business, or local government might be interested in electric vehicle infrastructure. A lot of what MACOG is focused on is making sure that our region continues to comply with national air quality standards, particularly for ozone, and electric vehicles reduce the local emission of those air pollutants that contribute to that. And actually today is an air quality action day, and tomorrow is as well. So we're always thinking about that and concerned with making sure our transportation network enables us to comply with those standards. However, you might be thinking, electric vehicles don't emit directly, but they emit indirectly through whatever their power source is. However, when you look at the state of Indiana, we're about 70% coal powered for our electricity. Even under those conditions, all electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids are less carbon intensive than gasoline powered vehicles. So even at our current state. So that's good news for the vehicles that are on the road today. And then when we look at the future, NIPSCO and I&M are making big strides to increase the percentage of renewables. And so if we transition to electric vehicles, they will only become cleaner over time, as NIPSCO's made some very large commitments to renewables, and I&M, Indiana Michigan Power, already has less coal than the state average due to the nuclear plant in Michigan. So that's good news as far as any concerns about driving on coal power there, which is a common question and a reasonable question to ask. Other reasons are listed here on the slide. Energy independence is one that many folks are thinking about at the national level, but at the individual level or the fleet level, the organization level, when you're thinking about adopting plug-in vehicles, it's the economics that makes it work. And the good news here is that technology is making that possible and more attractive than ever. So whereas a vehicle may have had a range of 100 miles a number of years ago, around 2016, that was very common. Now it's more common for vehicles like the Chevy Bolt or the or similar vehicles, especially Teslas, to have a range well over 200, 250, approaching 300 miles. And that can really get you pretty far across the state of Indiana and long distance travel. That's made possible by decreasing battery prices, improving technology, and then manufacturer investments make the news regularly, and that's really increasing choice. So we have a plug-in hybrid minivan, the Chrysler Pacifica, that is a family-sized option. There is the Mitsubishi Outlander, that's an SUV, and there are a lot of choices that aren't your small little hatchback that many people aren't interested in. It just doesn't work for them. So choices are on the market. There are incentives that are still available for some vehicles, depending on the manufacturers, for federal tax credits. There are utility incentives coming down the line under Indiana Michigan Power. There'll be rebates for installing your infrastructure. And what really has driven the interest in electric vehicles for a long time is the lower cost of fuel and the volatility. So you'll notice here on this graph, the green triangle shows electricity prices increase slowly, but are much more predictable and easy to plan for than volatile gasoline, diesel, which is dependent on things that are happening on the national stage. So that drives a lot of interest in electric vehicles as well. So why focus on improving our local charging infrastructure for vehicles? There's a pretty big role to play here locally, addressing the gaps in destination charging. That would be locations that are walkable to downtowns where you have restaurants, you have maybe the county courthouse, banks, other local shopping. So people can really park and charge for a number of hours while they go about a number of errands that are very walkable, restaurants especially. And that's really important for addressing range anxiety, which is the fear that you're not going to make it to your next destination. So if people come here from Plymouth or Warsaw, we want to make sure they know that they'll be comfortable charging easily without having to take an Uber from a charging station to where their final destination is, that there are enough charging to support their activities and be able to drive an electric vehicle throughout our region. And then another role is that level 2 stations provide peace of mind in general, even if people don't use them very often. 90% of charging happens at home. I have an electric vehicle, and that's where almost all my charging happens because I live very close to where I work. But just knowing that it's out there, if I was stranded in a nearby community, being able to have charging available makes that purchase more likely to happen. Although that range anxiety is one of the most significant concerns reported on surveys when people are asked about whether they would adopt an electric vehicle for their next purchase. The business case is pretty strong as well for destination level 2 charging. That 2 to 4 hour dwell time that it may take to charge a battery is really great for shopping and a lot of those other activities in those locations. As well as providing an amenity if you want to attract tenants to a multi-unit building. That's another reason to consider providing infrastructure. Few notes on how your organization, business, or local government can support the development of infrastructure. You can gather and share information about incentives and electric vehicles. You can connect with your local Department of Energy program for clean cities. That's South Shore Clean Cities here in our region. You can attend ride and drive events where you can test drive or see different vehicles like this Chevy Bolt here shown in the image. You can install or lease your own level 2 charging stations for your tenants, employees, customers, or the public. And then you can consider piloting your own electric vehicle in your fleet or for your personal self, like Ancilla College, the Center at Donaldson has done with providing a charging station and testing out both a plug-in hybrid and all-electric vehicle. Here's some pictures from our ride and drive events that we've held over the years, which have been a lot of fun. The next one's coming up on October 2nd for the National Drive Electric Week, so we hope to see many of you there. And finally, we're distributing a survey to gauge who's interested in electric vehicle infrastructure so that we can support you, answer your questions, point you in the right direction, and let you know of any incentives or funding that are available to support that investment. These are 2 local stations from around the region. So with that, I will turn it over to hear from our first case study from Goshen.
All right. Thank you, Leah. And now we have Aaron from the Maple City talk about some of the local projects that have been going on in Goshen. Aaron, take it away.
All right. Let's see if I've got control here. Let's see. There we go. Thanks for including Goshen in this. Mayor Stutzman was hoping to be available to talk a little bit. He's unavailable, and I have to apologize for some mix-up on that part regarding the timing here. But he did have a statement, so I'll go ahead and just read that for everybody. He says, "Thank you for the opportunity to talk to all of you. I've lived in Goshen my whole life. That means I'm an upstream or downstream neighbor to all of you who also live in the St. Joseph River and Lake Michigan watersheds. I've been able to watch the city of Goshen change in some remarkable ways over my lifetime. As a city council member first, and now as mayor of my city for the past nearly 5 years, I've been able to participate directly, along with many other people, in the shaping and defining of our city's continued growth. One of the most challenging tasks which we face in Goshen is preparing for the century of environmental and climate changes ahead of us. We are not the only community facing these challenges. We recognize that these large-scale environmental changes will cause and require system-wide changes in the ways that we operate and live in Goshen. We are focusing our attention on discovering what those system-wide changes will be, how to anticipate them, and how to proactively and collaboratively adapt. Some of the work towards this end, which I'm most proud of, includes adoption of an urban tree canopy goal to double the tree shade in our city from 22% to 45% by 2045, development of an environmental education curriculum for all of our schools with backing from multiple community investors, sustained revitalization of our downtown into a vibrant, people-friendly business destination, creation of a new Department of Environmental Resilience tasked with exploring and advocating options for best practices, engagement on racial justice issues, including immigrant rights and support for broad inclusivity, and participation in the 2017 Solarize Indiana project, for which Goshen received gold level recognition. Separate from the Solarize project, we installed a 320,000 kilowatt solar array on city property to signal our commitment to good fiscal and environmental stewardship. In that vein, we understand that transforming our transportation system away from fossil fuels to renewable electric is essential. In 2019, the city bought its first fully electric car to go along with a growing number of hybrid electric vehicles. This year, 2020, we purchased 2 hybrid vehicles for our police department in an effort to begin making our patrol division more efficient. And in January of this year, we completed installation of our first EV charging station outside of City Hall in one of our public parking lots. We're working on plans for several more charging installations. We understand that building this EV infrastructure not only helps to spur the growth and accessibility of this technology, but can attract people to Goshen and connect us to other communities. There's a lot of work yet to be done in order to achieve broad electrification of our transportation system. A really important aspect will be making this technology affordable to the least advantaged among us so that everyone can participate in the effort to make our communities healthy and clean. We're really grateful for leadership on EV development from Michiana Area Council of Governments and South Shore Clean Cities Incorporated. Thanks again, Mayor Jeremy Stutzman. So I wanted to give just a little more background, if I can go backwards here, on some of the work that the city has been doing to kind of position ourselves for electric vehicles. So last year, the mayor created an environmental advisory committee, volunteers from the public to help advise on these kinds of things. The city council, at the mayor's behest, passed a resolution, resolution 2019-19, which included the requirement to create and implement a climate action plan by 2021. Last summer, I and others worked to, including externs from IU, worked to create our first greenhouse gas emissions inventory, which is a key component of creating a climate action plan. And then, as the mayor mentioned, by the end of last year, we had also created a new department, which I stepped into, tasked with, among other things, creation of a climate action plan. And of course, building our EV capacity, our electric vehicle capacity, is an important part of creating this climate action plan in many ways. So here is a picture of that EV station just outside of City Hall, and that's our Tesla Model 3 there in the back. So this was a photo just taken a week ago, but as mentioned earlier, this was created in January, or the installation was completed in January. Here are the kind of the raw numbers on this particular station. As Leah was talking earlier, we have a level 2, and that's maybe a more accessible kind of installation for a downtown application like ours. So again, a 2 to 4 hour charge time, depending on how much charge you need, depending on what kind of vehicle you have. And those are the costs that we incurred for this particular installation. So just under $10,000, and we did use our utility department to accommodate some of the effort here, some of the work, the site prep prior to the installation. So this table here shows us what we've incurred in electric charges associated with this charger. So there's a lot of numbers there. The set of numbers to pay attention to is all the way on the right, the pink column there, because this particular charging station is metered along with 6 other parking lot lights. We decided to kind of show the whole package here. There are different ways, of course, that you could, that one could create an installation, but this is kind of how it worked out for us. At any rate, since January, since we became operational, we've incurred less than $300 in charges. Whether the pandemic has anything to do with the use, we don't have any way to know yet. Time will tell how much use, how much more use we see out of this particular station, and we're very interested to see how that may work out. We are engaged already in the process of hopefully installing 2 more stations, charging stations in the downtown area of Goshen. You can see the City Hall site there in green, and then the 3 other proposed sites. The one the one furthest to the south is at our public library in the parking lot there, and the other 2 are at other public parking lots on the outskirts of the downtown area, and we're working to determine which of those is a best fit. But overall, our intention is to create more options in our downtown area to encourage people to come to that area. As the mayor mentioned in his statement, we have worked hard at curating our downtown and creating it as a destination, as a tourist business kind of destination area. So this is one of the strategies for allowing that to continue to happen. Again, Leah already mentioned some about the importance of the electric grid matrix and the generation strategies. Goshen is served almost entirely by NIPSCO, so the direction that NIPSCO is taking its generation its electric generation is really important to us, especially as we consider our climate action plan and think about the role that EV has to play in our strategizing. So we can see by this graph that NIPSCO projects before 2030 to have taken coal generation offline, which therefore makes the burning, the creation of electricity that much cleaner. Again, as Leah referenced earlier, and this plays directly into the strategies that we are working to adopt for cleaning our own government fleet over time, and the work that we want to do throughout the Goshen community to provide clean energy and clean transportation options. Which brings me to the last thing that I want to just touch on here. The environmental justice aspect of creating clean energy and creating clean transportation is directly applicable to social justice, and this is clearly something that we are paying attention to in new and focused ways these days. That's extremely important, but it's not something that we intend to lose sight of either. So, so I've included here a picture of one of our lovely interurban trolleys, which MACOG helps to fund in Goshen and in Elkhart. And so, you know, we're interested in finding ways to make electric vehicles available to everybody. So an electric bus, and that's a heavy lift. There's work to do to figure out how that might happen. But we also have to be thinking about how we can transform our school bus fleets too in that regard. In order to bring as many people from as many economic situations along in this trajectory as we can, and as quickly as we can, and with as many options to participate as possible. So these are the things that we are committing to in Goshen, that we are learning how to commit to, and that we're excited to explore along with other regional Michiana players, because it clearly, electric vehicle infrastructure is clearly something that requires as many of us as possible to find ways to enter the conversation and that transformation. It's much better when we're all working together on this. Thanks for having us along, and on behalf of the mayor, thank you also.
Terrific. Thank you, Aaron. That was very good. Thanks for tying it all together. All right. Next up, we have from the historic city of South Bend, Therese. Go ahead and take it away, Therese. Thank you.
Oh, Ryan, everybody's city is a little bit historic. Thank you so much for having me today. It's fun to be with all of you. And it's really appreciate Leah's great overview that I do think will give you a framework to understand these different case studies. What Goshen is doing is incredible, but I'm excited to share with you also what we've accomplished here in South Bend. And a little look behind the scenes of our decision-making process if you are also in the process of evaluating electric vehicle charging for your own organization or community. This could be helpful for you too. So I'll talk about a little bit why we determined there was a need, how we selected the location and the siting considerations, the equipment that we selected, parking, and how folks are using the charger, and then some of the municipal procurement, marketing communications, and then a little snapshot of results from our first charging project. So our understanding of the need ranges from kind of the small practical issues to the big picture strategies, but throughout EV chargers do support the city's objectives. Some of this is similar to what Leah pointed out. In South Bend, our existing electric vehicle supply equipment was not conveniently located. A lot of it was in the suburbs. Some of it was Tesla specific and could not be used by other cars. A lot of it are in at car dealerships where you don't necessarily feel welcome to just park and then walk and go about your errands. So the locations were not consistent. We also wanted to take EV ownership kind of out of the fringe and make it seem less weird, less techy. By placing chargers in highly visible areas, everyone gets to see the variety of options available in the EV market. Leah mentioned, we now have different form factors, minivans and SUVs with four-wheel drive. And so people get to see, the different cars that are parked there every day and be able to better visualize themselves in an electric vehicle, just like staging your home when you're trying to sell it. People can visualize themselves using that kind of vehicle. And also to kind of create some community around electric vehicle charging in South Bend, electric vehicle ownership in South Bend. And then from the big picture, encouraging EV ownership supports our climate action plan, which we adopted in November of 2019. So we found that 2/3 of our transportation greenhouse gas emissions were coming from passenger cars. And so reducing emissions from cars, certainly driving less is a big step towards reducing emissions, but also looking at alternative fuel vehicles, including electric vehicles. So some of our location considerations, we did, as Leah mentioned, consider our destination, places where people had kind of a medium dwell time, but also there was some turnover. So a collection of locations, since we're looking at street parking here, we're looking for street parking that was adjacent to a number of public and private destinations, businesses, restaurants, parks and recreation areas, government offices, for example. We also wanted it to be very visible, so something that people would see the chargers, see cars charging, see cars coming and going, and see the spots being used. So we also wanted them to be convenient for the EV drivers themselves. Maybe not the absolute best spots, but definitely spots that were convenient, not stashed away, in an alley or behind a building or someplace out of the way, but to treat those users as if they deserve the parking spots. We're using city right-of-ways, we're using public street parking, and we're also, since the city's providing the electricity, we had to consider what electrical service was available. So the lower picture there is of a common set of control cabinets and meter cabinets for traffic signals and streetlights. One of our projects was installed right next to that. You actually can see it in that photo. Because the electrical meter was right inside that cabinet. We also took a look at our rates so that we were not attaching our, we were not taking a electrical and a utility rate that was for a very specific use and then now adding a very different use to it. So we wanted to make sure that the rate would allow the type of electricity use that an electric vehicle charger brings. Installation was relatively simple when we had the correct electrical service available. So having the meter, having a service at 204 or 240 volt, and then having an open circuit for the charger. The chargers came with pretty easy to follow instructions. We contracted it out. There was some concrete work, some running of conduit, and then wiring it into the existing circuit. But I'm sure our city electricians would have been totally capable of installing it as well. So our equipment considerations were many, and we actually had different considerations for the two chargers that we installed to date. The first one being more of a pilot project. The second EV charger we actually were using to get points towards our LEED green building certification, so it needed to have different features. So on the technical side, we were trying to decide between whether we wanted our charger to be a dumb charger, not necessarily connected to network or data service, or a networked charger, and whether we would get better connection with Wi-Fi or cellular data, or even like a hardwired Ethernet connection. We talked a lot about payment process, and there are several ways that you could collect payments. We decided from the outset to make using the chargers free, just to encourage as much use as possible. But there are several ways to pay, everything from annual memberships, like I believe Notre Dame does, access cards, credit card readers on the charger itself, and even over the phone credit card payments. Each of them have pros and cons. And then access can also be controlled via access cards, or even manual keys. If ours are public, but if you had one maybe at your business and you only wanted certain people who had memberships or certain people to be able to use it, that's an option. Utility communications was important for our lead points. So being able to have the utility communicate with our electric vehicle charger, to have it be part of the Internet of Things. There's not a program currently for Indiana Michigan Power to control electric vehicle chargers, but it is a possibility with the technology that we've selected. What data you have access to. So one of our chargers doesn't collect any data, and then one of our chargers will have cloud services that will be able to track usage of the charger, energy costs and things like that. And then warranty and service are very important to us, the city investment. We want it to be able to sustain it and maintain it for a long time. So being able to know that we have protections of this equipment is important. And then on the physical side, the mounting type, whether it's on a pedestal or attached to a wall, how many cars can charge at one time, which car models can use each station. Leah mentioned that a little bit and showed the connectors. And then we were concerned about cable length because we were using on-street parallel parking. We wanted to make sure that the cord could reach any potential location that a port might be on a vehicle on both of the spots. Pull-in spots maybe need less cord, but that's something to think about too. And then we were hoping to have some consistency and some interoperability around town, at least the chargers of the city. So there was a slight inclination to lean towards using the same manufacturer for all city-owned locations, and then branding all of them the same. So having a branding opportunity was important to our selection as well. So because these are public parking spots, we needed to put up some kind of traffic controls, parking controls. We wanted to make sure that the parking experience was familiar for those who already drive and park downtown. You would have more different options for off-street charging spaces. Like you saw in Goshen, they had, in a parking lot, they had more options for colors and signage that they used. But we wanted to really make it kind of streamlined with the downtown parking regulations we already had. So we set a 2-hour time limit for our street parking, and we made a requirement that the car must be plugged in. Our enforcement is done by our GTSB ambassadors, so they're not city employees, but we didn't want to expect them to know all the technology behind charging and be able to tell if it was charged or not. So we just make it a requirement that the cord is plugged in. So an electric vehicle that doesn't care to charge should not be parking in these spots. We did actually, yes, have somebody take the charging cord and put it under the door to their gas tank so that they would look like they were charging. So that wasn't great. And it also does not solve the issue of EVs parking and plugging in their car, even if they don't actually need the charge. So, Leah pointed to the challenges that battery electric vehicles have, and that they actually need that juice to get to their next destination. And what are some of the etiquette things around there? That's kind of where building a community of EV drivers comes in, so we can talk about kind of best practices and being a good neighbor to the EV chargers. Our signage, we wanted to visually match other parking restrictions, so we have done that. I'll show you on the next slide. And then education, especially when the spots were new, was important. So all city parking violations get the same ticket. outside of like handicap spot violations. So if you overstay on a block, or you park in an EV spot when you're not supposed to, it's the same price ticket. But we do waive the first ticket for the electric vehicle stations. And then we printed out these flyers, very small, and then tucked them inside the ticket envelope, and also left them in the clerk's office, just to kind of explain what the rules were for those specific spots. These are the spots that are right outside the county city building, so this was our pilot program. So here's just a picture of the signage outside those spots that we had created. The EV charger right in the middle to service these two spots, one from the rear and one from the front. We did not actually remove a handicap spot, but many name tags do block the EV spots, and they cite confusion. Some of them feel like that because the EV sign is also blue and white, that they feel like it marks a handicap spot, but these spots have never actually been handicap spots. What they actually were one of them was not a marked spot at all, and it was often a home to short-term delivery trucks and waiting vehicles. And so people in those, the FedEx driver and the electrician and the person who needs to just run in quick for an errand, they were very frustrated to lose those spots. But we did add a little bit more structure. So we have 2-hour parking with our, which is standard through most of downtown, with the green signs, which are also standard, and then electric vehicle only with arrows indicating the 2 spots. And then we had additional blue EV signs, and then the vehicle must be plugged in. So that's where we're enforcing our electric vehicles that are not plugged in still should not be parking here. So a little bit about our municipal procurement. If you're with a non-governmental organization, hopefully your procurement's a little bit more straightforward. But because this was a fairly lower cost project, we didn't need to go through a huge bid process. But we also didn't really know, it was a pilot project, we didn't really know what we were doing. So we put together some informal specifications, and for the to get the lead credits, we had some specific certifications from the lead experts. So we put together informal specifications, and then we, because we're a member of Climate Mayors, we wanted to see if we could use the EV Purchasing Collaborative, which is at this link, driveevfleets.org, to see if they had any existing contracts or special pricing that we could take advantage of. Any municipal government or nonprofit is eligible to use cooperative purchasing. So if you're interested in an electric vehicle or charging equipment, I highly recommend that you check out this page and see if the pricing that you see here might be better than what you can get in your marketplace. And we contacted Zeph Energy, which is a company that basic Clipper Creek equipment and adds data and services and technology to it to take it from a kind of a dumb station to a smart station. So we contacted about 6 different suppliers to get pricing for our specifications. Compared the pricing and the features, and we ended up going with Zeph Energy. The costs were significantly lower than all the competitors. We also liked that we had good experience with our Clipper Creek, so we knew that we liked the hardware. Zeph is a young company with limited staff, so it took us some patience in working with them. So here's a couple of our, and I mentioned we had a local installer. We just hired a commercial electrician to install according to the instructions, and we had 2 different installers for our 2 different stations, and we have had no problems. And then just a snapshot at our costs. We bought our first station in 2017, and like I said, it was a dumb station, so we ended up having a very good price, $2,100 for that. And then we had it installed for $3,200. So the whole station came in just over $5,000, which was great. I had budgeted quite a bit more for our network station, and you can see we just bought that at the end of last year. Came in at just about $5,000 for, but that includes 5 years of a service package, which includes cellular data, warranty, and services, plus access to the cloud software. So 5 years of data is packed into that price as well, and that was required for the lead credits. And we haven't gotten that in, or that was installed as part of an overall construction project, so I don't have a line item price for that. And then this year, we're actually ready to do 4 new installations planned in our municipal parking garages, as well as 1 recreation center. So we will be going out to get quotes for installation of those units as well. And those all were pretty similarly priced to the Clipper Creek that we bought in 2019. We also bought those from Zeph Energy. And then I think excitement building is a big aspect in, you know, it's kind of chicken egg. You need the chargers, but you also need the drivers. And how do you normalize alternative fuel vehicles in your community, in your organization? So we did a lot of excitement building. You know, it wasn't an expensive project. We spent, you know, just about $5 grand, but we tried to get as much benefit, public relations benefit and press coverage as we could. So we had a fun ribbon cutting event, which in the sustainability world, you don't get to cut a lot of ribbons, so that was very fun for me. I worked with MACOG and some individual drivers in our area to start a local drivers group on Facebook, and so that's been a great way to kind of share community needs and challenges specifically around owning electric vehicles. MACOG also put together some mini case studies. We featured one of our electric van driver down here. So just kind of showcasing the different users we already have in our community and the different types of vehicles that they use and the different things that they use them for. So highlighting people who have plug-in hybrids, people who have kids, people who haul a lot of sports equipment, you know, people who care about energy independence, people who are rideshare drivers. So we wanted to highlight the range of uses that range of reasons you might choose an EV. Leah talked about the ride and drive events. Those have been very fun and successful. And then standardized branding. I have a picture of what our new, our charging network branding will look like. So for right now, our chargers are free. And so we put these decals on our new chargers that are going in, and we'll add them to our existing chargers to just kind of brand them and let people know that this is all part of a city initiative to make it easier for them to own EVs. And then a couple of areas where I know MACOG is really invested in. I also, the Sustainability Office is invested in kind of looking at the systems that make it challenging to own electric vehicles in South Bend. So definitely local dealers need a lot of support, and they need to understand what the market is for these vehicles and try to encourage them to carry and offer and become more educated in selling electric vehicles in South Bend, so that folks don't have to go to Chicago or Indianapolis or Grand Rapids to learn about and test drive and buy these vehicles. And supporting potential charging station hosts. Perhaps you yourself are interested in adding an electric vehicle charging station to your business or to your apartment building or organization. So making sure that any knowledge that we have gained, that we are sharing that with you so that you can make decisions about whether you want to add a charging station yourself. And then advocating to the utility to support electric vehicle programs and try to make EV adoption easier and more affordable with utility support. You know, they're interested in selling more electricity. It benefits them, so trying to help them see the win-win and pass on some of those benefits to consumers, something that we try to do in the office. This was a very exciting moment for us. The British ambassador to the US and our former mayor, Mayor Pete, the British ambassador was on a road tour with his electric Jaguar featured here behind the mayor. The goal of the tour was to boost relationships between the US and the UK regarding green energy and electric vehicle technologies. Because South Bend had made investments in alternative fuel in our own city fleet and also investment in biking and walking and putting in these electric vehicle chargers right next to the county city building, it earned us a stop on the tour. So we were really proud and excited to have this, the ambassador and his electric Jaguar visit South Bend. And then the red car that you see also plugged in is Chasten Buttigieg's Ford C-Max Energy. So the mayor's family also owns an electric vehicle. So we were very excited to be able to advertise our chargers and all the good things that South Bend are doing in this way. And then I just want to touch on the results of our pilot project, our dumb charger, as it were. Our our second charger just got installed a couple months ago, so I don't have a lot of data on that yet. But our dumb charger, I calculated that it is costing about 700 extra kilowatt hours per month than it used to cost just to run the traffic signals that are at that meter. So it's costing us about an extra $91 a month to offer this free electric vehicle charging at the county city building. But it also created new demand charges. So it did change the shape of it did change the nature of our electricity usage at that meter. And that's another reason why it's important to double check your rates, and maybe a different rate will be better once you add that use to your account. The use of the way that the EV charger uses electricity, check in with your account and your rate on the account. We were excited to have powered 27,000 miles in a year, all electric miles in a year, and compared to a fossil fuel only car in our specific zip code, given the nature of the utilities that Leah talked about, we still avoided 5,444 kilograms of CO2 every year, which equates to 2.3 homes energy use, or planting 330 trees every year. So we're pretty happy with the results, and as Leah said, they will only get better as Indiana Michigan Power continues to convert away from coal and towards other clean sources. We've seen dozens of different users from all kinds of different states, many of them doing business at the county city building. Several regulars that visit often or work in the area will take advantage. And then in the evenings, after the county city building is closed, you'll see folks parking there and walking a few blocks to use the gym or go to a restaurant, because it is the closest charging station downtown. After we install our parking garage charging stations, we think we'll see a lot of those users park even closer to their destinations. Parking enforcement continues to always be a challenge. Parking enforcement in general is a challenge, but people are getting used to the spots and what they're used for. And we have been discussing at what point we would want to transition to paid charging. Our system will be set up for that. So at some point we could start asking EV drivers to make a phone call to make a credit card payment, or get a membership to use the chargers downtown. So we're thinking about that, but right now we're going to keep them free. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Therese. Very good data. Thank you for sharing that presentation with us. Good job. All right, so to give you a little quick background on South Shore Clean Cities, right after I turn my webcam on. And so South Shore Clean Cities is a 501c3 nonprofit. We promote the use of alternative fuel vehicles and fuels with the incorporation of idle reduction technologies to reduce our dependence on foreign oil. We are one of nearly 100 clean city organizations across the country, and we are a Department of Energy coalition. We're located in beautiful St. John, hot St. John right now, Indiana. Next slide, please. So one of the programs that we manage is the Northern Indiana Green Fleet program for the Michiana Area Council of Governments territory that is located in Elkhart, Marshall, Kosciuszko, St. Joseph counties. The goal of the program is to improve the environmental performance of public, private, and non-profit vehicle fleets in Northern Indiana. We look for different ways where we can save on emissions produced, and also look for ways that we can save on costs associated with operation and maintenance. So currently there are 32 MACOG municipal, county, school, and university member fleet. And we're looking at all those different ways where we can incorporate a sustainable transportation fuel, vehicles, and also those idle reduction technologies. One of the ways that we do this is by creating different policies and supporting vehicle emission petroleum use reductions. One of the things, just like we have going on today, one of the many things that we do are educational opportunities which these are always including different fuel and technology workshops, trainings, and seminars. Through our Green Fleet program, we recognize and give certifications for fleet leaders that are taking steps to improve environmental performance and efficiency. We have branding and promotional tools to help fleets leverage earned certification status. There's a lot of different informational resources, including current technology options, marketing conditions, laws, and different incentives that we can bring to the table. The connections with our vendors and our different, let's say, further down the path to sustainability fleets is really invaluable, because those are the opportunities where like-minded individuals are able to talk shop and speak the same language. We help with a variety of different funding assistance with grant opportunities and other state and federal incentive programs. And, you know, at the end of it all, the professional consultation, including a green fleet audit and emissions quantification, will be given and gone over with. And sometimes it translates to a 30-page document. So MACOG does have a survey that is available right now, and it is for the MACOG territory folks that are interested in electric vehicles and the infrastructure as well. So please feel free to take that survey, go to the MACOG website, Facebook page as well, and if you email us, we will send it to you as well. You know, at the end of the day, the programs and everything that we do is all about partnerships. And by working together, we can reduce our dependence on foreign oil and the emissions that are associated with that. There are a lot of different funding opportunities, and just like Leah had mentioned today, there is funding available for electric vehicle charging infrastructure on both the level 2 and the DC fast charging that is due at the end of September. And there are multiple opportunities throughout the year, and there are annual opportunities. And if you're involved with South Shore Clean Cities, that is the best place that we can work together on those different opportunities, provide you that information, and work hand in hand with you. There's the contact information. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions or would like some more information. The first question that we have today, and I'm gonna send this out to Therese. It is, what data did you consider when choosing a location for a charging station?
Yeah, so we knew we wanted our first station to be close to the county city building, and we knew that we wanted it to be on public street parking, because that's where what we have control over as a city. We don't have control over private parking lots, which there are plenty of in downtown South Bend. We knew we wanted it to be a short distance from electrical service that the city already manages and pays for. So primarily that's streetlight and traffic signal cabinets, or a city-owned facility. And so that kind of narrowed down the spot. So we went a couple of blocks away from the county city building and found a couple of locations where we thought we could set aside 2 parking spots near electrical service with access to the county city building. However, when we ran those plans by the mayor's office, the mayor was concerned that it would be not visible enough, that it wouldn't get the desired effect of increasing electric vehicle ownership and trying to normalize EV ownership. And so he really wanted to pick a visible, highly visible location. And so we did pick those spots right across from the county city building. As I said, they were already being kind of underutilized and illegally utilized. So we just formalized them as parking spots and plopped the EV charger right down where everyone could see and enjoy them. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. We did put a lot of thought into alternative locations, but definitely shifted our strategy when we were able to prioritize wanting them to be very visible and active and convenient.
All right, thank you. Aaron, I have a question for you. What has been the reception from the general public about the charging stations that have been deployed? Has there been any pleasant surprises along the way?
Sorry, that's for me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know, we've got 6 months of data at this point, not a whole lot. Early on in January and February, almost right away, there was a fair amount of use. We've noticed that there's a rideshare person in particular who's been taking advantage of that, and that's great. That's great. And then if you remember the data that we had, it looks like there was a bit of a drop off in the early COVID months. It's picked back up here more recently. So I mean, we don't have a whole lot of data to go on, but we have been pleased with the kind of use that we've had, and it seems to indicate to us that there is appetite. We hear this from local residents. Goshen College, just down the road from us, from our site, has had a charger for several years already, and you know, they're getting plenty of use too. So we're convinced that there is plenty of opportunity. We also think about visibility, about where we can position these so that accessibility is greatest. And we need to be paying attention to what other folks are doing, like Therese and South Bend. There's plenty for us to learn too.
Thank you, sir. Leah, so range anxiety is one of those main factors that comes up that people list as a hindrance to the adoption of EVs. How important do these local level 2 stations address range anxiety?
Yeah, I think they are a critical piece of the puzzle. As I mentioned earlier, we have folks traveling through the region on round trips from nearby communities like South Bend to Warsaw and back, or Goshen, Elkhart, Plymouth, and those trips can really stretch a battery that, you know, is rated at a little over 100 miles. When you add on AC or heat and highway speeds with wind resistance, that can really actually cut back on the actual range that someone gets. So I think they're really critical for people's ability to make even those trips within the region, as well as just being comfortable that if another errand comes up, that you can deviate from your plan and add on those extra miles. It's just so important for people to be comfortable using the vehicles as they would any other vehicle in the normal course of driving that. So it is important, because when you think about how much the typical person actually leaves our region and goes to Indianapolis, Fort Wayne, Chicago, Kalamazoo, it's not that often. I personally have been an electric vehicle owner for 3 years, and I sold my ICE vehicle, my gas-powered second vehicle, pretty quickly, because I was paying a lot more in insurance than it cost me to simply rent a car when I go out of town farther than my car can take me. So, you know, part of building out that level 3 network will be allowing shorter range vehicles to make those long distance trips, which are currently not possible. But even for using them within the region, I think level 2 is just absolutely critical.
All right, thank you. One last question, and this is going to be directed at Therese, and I'll let Aaron answer as well. What would you say to another municipal leader interested in introducing EVSC to their community? What do you wish you knew before you started down this path? Smart/network versus dumb versus non-network station? Any advice?
I would say, especially our dumb station did not cost as much or provide as much headache as we anticipated. So I would just say, go for it and treat it like a pilot and communicate that it's a pilot. I'm excited about the data that we'll get from our network of smart stations, because I think that'll help us better understand the the use of the chargers. And the thing about the chargers is, I mean, yes, you pay to install them, but you can move them if you need to. You can unscrew the pedestal and the stations, and you can move them to a location that makes more sense for your community. So I do think it's valuable to get the data, but if I were in a small community and I was really only going to be looking at one station, I don't know necessarily how worthwhile it would be to pay for the extra data usage, as long as your community is comfortable and your leadership is comfortable giving away that electricity. If you do ever want to get to a point where you're charging for electricity, you're going to need those smarts and the payment options. So that was something that we were considering when we decided what our second and beyond chargers were going to be. Those are all going to be networked chargers with data and capabilities and eventually payment options.
Yeah, and I would just say that, you know, we're quite a bit earlier in the game than South Bend, but I guess the encouragement that I hear from our mayor and that I would give too is that similar to what Therese is saying, you know, pick the level that you're comfortable with. You know, do spend a little time thinking through the options, but don't feel like you have to go for the top tier right away. Making a first step is important, and will likely unfold new options as, you know, as this technology continues to unfold itself, and as accessibility and reasons for moving in this direction become more and more compelling. So any step is the right step. That's what I would say.
All right. Last question, question. Leah, what are some reoccurring factors leading toward adoption of electric vehicles and EVSE that you've seen at a local level? And I apologize, you're on mute, Leah.
There you go. Something interesting to share that ties back a little bit into the topic of range anxiety. Something interesting about very local EV adoption is that a lot of folks are not going out and buying the nicest, newest range vehicles that have, you know, you can go 300 miles. They're not buying the newest Chevy Bolt. They're actually buying used vehicles. They're buying Nissan Leafs from 2013, Chevy Volts that are no longer in production. And so, you know, those vehicles are very affordable, and that's what a lot of folks can afford. And that just highlights kind of the market that we're looking to serve. Those are all shorter range vehicles. The older they are, the more, you know, the technology is limited in range. And so I see a lot of the conversations at the state level around preparing for the latest and greatest technologies and needing to support vehicles that can go 250 miles, but we're just not there. And I don't think that we will get there very quickly, because it's so attractive to really get the financial benefits of electric vehicles. Buying used is a really great option for a lot of people. And we have a local group of electric vehicle owners called the Michiana Electric Vehicle Network that participates in ride and drive events. And so many of those folks there have bought local, they've bought used from the secondary market. And I think a lot of that interest is being driven from that market, not necessarily from high income earners. There are definitely those out there. A lot of those might tend towards a Tesla vehicle, but you know, that affordability, saving money on electricity or on their fuel costs is a big driver for a lot of people, as well as the environmental benefits. People with solar also, you know, that's one step. If they get solar panels, the next thing is they'll get an electric vehicle and vice versa. So we see a lot of those solar early adopters also being really interested in EVs.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you very much, and bring it full circle with solar there. That's going to wrap it up today. So thank you, everyone. Thank you to our presenters for presenting. Please be on the lookout for our next webinar coming up this Thursday, July 9th. That's going to be at 1 p.m. Central Time. It is going to be the Indiana VW EV Charging Network RFP webinar. We're going to have Sean Seals on there to talk about what is going on with IDEM and their electric vehicle infrastructure funding that is available. Please visit South Shore Clean Cities website for more information. Once again, thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our speakers for the presentations and participation. Go ahead, you have our contact information associated with the webinar. Thank you very much and have a great day.